Hello and welcome back to Mahas's Kitchen. This video is the second installment in a series called Food for Thought, where we have deep and nuanced conversations around food. Today's topic, food trauma. And before we get started, as you might have guessed, these kinds of topics or conversations might be a little bit uncomfortable for some of you, so consider yourself warned. Now, what do I mean when I talk about food trauma? I'm simply referring to how your upbringing has affected your eating habits. We'll talk about my story first, and then later on in the video, I'll be sharing some of the comments that have been shared by some of you on my Instagram. There are two big parts of my upbringing that really affected how I eat today. And the first one is how I was raised at home, and then the second one has to do with school. So, starting with home. At home, it was almost like a criminal offense to throw away food. As much as I'm smiling and laughing about it now, back then it was no joke. It was serious business. You couldn't throw away food. So, what would happen is the food that you are served on your plate, you have to clear it. Literally, you couldn't leave any kind of crumbs, let alone any kind of leftovers. For some reason, we were not encouraged or even really allowed to return food to the hot pot or the sufuria or whatever it is, or to even store it in the fridge as leftovers. What you get on your plate, you finish, period. It was strict, but it was to the point where when you're eating and maybe some food falls off your plate or some crumbs end up on the table, that was seen as wasted food. So in short, there was scarcity mentality. There was a scarcity mindset to how I was raised in terms of food. And this affected me profoundly in two major ways. The first one was that now, years later, sometimes, despite my intuition, I'll find myself eating crumbs from the table, or sometimes even from the floor, as much as that is a bit cringy to admit. But that's how it is. I know there's the 5-second rule and all of that, but for me, sometimes it feels like a compulsion. It feels like I have to eat this thing. I can't watch food get wasted. I can't throw it away. So that's something that I've struggled with. And then another thing is, while I was growing up, I don't know, I think in retrospect is when I can really see it. I feel like sometimes I was mean, I was not generous with my food, because I was working on the belief that there isn't enough food, the scarcity mindset. There's not enough for everyone. So there's definitely not going to be enough for me. There's not enough food to go around. That's how I was operating. So I found it difficult to, for example, share snacks with my friends. So that was part one, how I was raised at home. And then school, and this applies to both primary and high school. School was another animal altogether. So for those of you who went through the 844 system like me, I think this will be very familiar. We were in a near constant state of studying, because the teachers had set up the system that way, always reading. There's a lot of content to be covered, so you're always reading. And what that means is there's little time for other activities, such as eating. Imagine that. It's very backward. It's very backward now that I think about it. But yeah, there was little time for eating. And the little time that you do have, you're hurried up and you're pressured even more to eat quickly. I remember a teacher from primary school. It's so vivid. I can see it like he's standing right in front of me. I remember this memory. because of how absurd it sounded to me at the time. He was making a demonstration in the dining hall and telling us that we should hold our plate like this, shape our mouths like a funnel, and just dump all of the food down. You get the picture, right? We're just encouraged to wolf down the food and move on because you have to keep reading. There's not enough time. So of course that stuck with me because this stuff was happening during my formative years. I spent a lot of time in school. So I just picked up the habit of eating quickly because that's how you survive, man. Sometimes I get into a sort of zone of mindless eating where I'm just going and the food disappears like this. Other times I feel like I can't stop eating because I've entered a zone. When you're in a zone, you're kind of in a flow state, something that's in motion, it wants to keep moving, right? So I just find myself like I can't stop eating. If there's food, I'll just keep eating. I'll just keep eating. And then the worst of it is something that I call attacking while defending. So this happens when it happens rarely. I don't know, maybe when I'm really hungry, or if I have a platter or a plate that has like many different things on it. So sometimes I would find myself where I'm just eating constantly, like I barely have time to breathe. I'm eating with two hands. While this hand is picking up this piece of food and shoving it into my mouth, this other hand has gone down to get more. By the time I'm finished chewing this one has come up, this hand has got more food. So I'm barely breathing. I'm just gulping down the food. Okay, so now imagine that, combine how I was raised at home and then combine the system that was imprinted on me in school, and it's just a recipe for disaster. So for example, even to this day, where if I find I have served what I know is a huge portion, there's part of me that knows it's too much, but there's the other part of me that's like, you have to finish this food. And then what happens is I eat quickly because I don't know, habits really stick with you, especially if I'm watching something or using my phone. It's even more mindless eating. So I'm just lost in the device and the food just kind of flies by, disappears. So what happens is I end up eating quickly and I end up overeating. That has been my story so far. I have struggled with overeating, especially now because I have this YouTube channel and I make cooking content. I love cooking, so obviously it's going to be difficult for me to hold back sometimes, especially if I have this kind of self-control issues. I started going to the gym more consistently of late, and that has been affecting my hunger levels. So I have to learn again how to adjust how much I eat and how many meals in a day I eat. And that's difficult when you're someone like me who struggles with overeating. It affects me when I travel, because now when I travel, especially if it's like a buffet or if it's just like a lot of food in a festive or a party or enjoyment kind of setting, it's difficult because there's a part of me that wants to sample everything. But now there's this other part of me that knows it's not good to overeat. There's one side which is like YOLO, the other side which is like you feel terrible if you overeat. So I've really been struggling with that. But I'm working on it because I've started to see how, despite how good in the moment it feels to just chomp down on whatever it is I'm eating, it's not healthy for me if I eat too much. And for me, what I mean by that is eating so much that I feel uncomfortable. I feel stuffed, my stomach just feels full, where it's even difficult to sleep. You have to sleep with your stomach facing up because if you try the other side, you can't. I don't like feeling that level of discomfort, and it's also a lingering kind of feeling. Like if I overeat, especially at night, I just know like for the rest of the night until when I go to sleep, I'll just be feeling weighed down, stuffed, full. It's not nice, not a good feeling. And then more recently I've started to notice that just putting so much food through your system, it's also overworking your body. It's like you're just redlining a car, revving it to the max all the time. The engine is, well, if it's not built well, it's not going to be able to sustain that. Just putting so many things through my system, I've been noticing it affects my skin. Of course, it affects my mood, it affects my energy levels, it affects my GI system, and of course, it affects my weight. So the rational side of me knows all of this. The rational side of me is like, this year, we're gonna lose weight, we're gonna burn fat, we're gonna build muscle, so we have to eat a certain way. But when it comes now to the time of eating, the monkey brain part of me, the lizard brain part of me is just, tough yourself, man. Kesi baadaye. So finding that balance has been difficult. But I'm working on it. Like I said, I've been seeing all the downsides of how I eat. There's no reason for me to put myself through all of that. The working on it part is difficult. Like understanding this stuff conceptually is one thing, but putting it into practice and making a habit of it is difficult. So what I found myself doing of late actually is reducing how much I eat food that I've bought outside. I mean, I do it once in a while, but it's, first of all, any food that I can make at home is gonna taste better than whatever it is I can buy outside. Not to toot my own horn or anything. And then second of all, what I make at home is gonna be more healthy and nutritious. Third, it's gonna be cheaper. So I encourage myself to cook most of my food. Though it's difficult sometimes and it's quite a bit of work and effort, but the pros outweigh the cons. So there are times where I do buy processed foods. There are times where I do buy, like restaurant food. And I've noticed that in those instances, I can't stop eating that food. Now that I think about it, maybe it's because that food is, processed. They usually put a lot of sugar, a lot of salt, butter into these foods to make them taste better. I'm not even talked about all the other chemicals that just we can say hijack your neural pathways when it comes to eating, right? Even like the packaging of the food is usually like red and yellow. I'm thinking about a very specific brand of biscuits here. Red and yellow, and those colors, they elicit some kind of instinctual response in us to, crave food or hunger. So maybe that's why I usually can't stop eating that food, because it's kind of made that way, greasy, oily, food with a lot of flavor enhancers and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Maybe that's why I struggle overeating it, and I shouldn't be too hard on myself because the system has been designed that way. But yeah, when I buy stuff like that, I find that I overeat it. So one, I've been cooking more food, or convincing myself that I should be cooking more food. Number two, buying this processed and food outside less. And then number three, when it comes to actually eating the food that I do have at home, I do try to follow portion control principles for losing weight. Okay, now that I've given you my story, let's talk about some of the stories or comments that you have shared on my Instagram. So I posted a question asking, how has your upbringing affected your eating habits? And these are some of the responses that I got. The first one says, in the beginning of my relationship, I couldn't eat if my man wasn't eating. I couldn't order food because I was scared it would be too expensive. He always ordered. To me, this again sounds like the scarcity mentality that I mentioned earlier, where this person was afraid to order food because it would be too expensive and there isn't enough money to pay for all of that food. I'm sure I'm sure you've heard the phrase, you got that McDonald's money. I don't know if you guys watched Everybody Hates Chris, but man, his dad especially was very tight-fisted when it came to money. So, Chris would ask, "Hey, can we get McDonald's?" The dad asked, "Do you got that McDonald's money?" Right? Like hakuna do, there's no money. So, I relate to this on a personal level. Another person said, "Food has never been a priority for me. I've been skipping meals since primary school." Now, I don't know about this one. I asked, how have you been surviving? Because I don't understand how you can skip a meal. I don't understand how people can forget to eat. Those are just not realities to they're not realities to me. I think it says more about me than it does about these other people, because it's been ingrained in me, I have to eat 3 times a day. So it's probably the case for them where that ingraining is something different. That's interesting. Food has never been a priority for this person. How? You need food to survive. You need to eat every day. So I'm just curious what upbringing this person went through. What's their story? When I posted that I struggled with overeating, someone responded with this: "I used to get beaten for not finishing my plate. I am a compulsive eater. Now I eat to finish the fridge, even if I didn't really want to eat in the first place." Oh, my heart goes out to this person. I empathize with you and I sympathize for you as well. I think this is a very relatable struggle. I've been through more or less the same. And now, look at us eating the whole fridge, even if you really didn't want to eat. Someone else said this: "I get lazy when I have to cook, especially for myself. So I rarely do. I eat very little, enough to lie to my stomach that there's food." That's poor eating habits. I've tried changing by cooking meals that I like, and they have to be quick meals or I'll give up before I start. and I said that finding motivation to cook is also something I struggle with. As much as that might sound a bit strange, coming from coming from a cooking YouTuber, but it's true, man. Sometimes I'm just too lazy, man. I don't want to buy food. No, I don't want to cook food. Or I really don't have anything in the fridge. So I'm just like, not today, man. What's the time to cook? So I go buy food, and like I said, I usually end up overeating it. Last one, this person says, "I used to overeat as a kid, always forced to finish my plate. Went to boarding schools really young, so it got worse. By the time I was 23, I was about 100 kgs. I had to stop and teach myself healthy eating, especially after joining the gym. Ended up under eating and got really, really small, lol. Started therapy and I literally healed that relationship." Again, sending love to all of us who are traumatized by boarding schools. You could take maybe any one of us who went through it for and replace them with the next person, and the story would probably be pretty similar, which is to say, tuko wengi tumepitia tukiwa wengi, and my heart goes out to all of us. And I'm glad to hear that this person healed that relationship with food and went so far as to go to therapy to break it all down. I hope that a lot of us can also heal from this trauma, and a lot of us can have a much healthier relationship with food. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you'd like to see more, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you'd also like to be part of this conversation, make sure to follow me on Instagram as well. Till next time, take it easy.